I think as I've gone through life and I've had some hardships, that there were definitely times where I felt like I was losing my hope. And, but I think through all of that, what I've learned is the beauty of life is you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's around the corner. And that's why on your most difficult days, you have to hold on to hope that there will be better days and better than you can even imagine. And so I think learning that through the years is what has been so much of the gift.
I'm Tracy Bingaman. I'm a full-time working mom of 5 who got sick, burned out, quit my job, and now I teach women how to mom smarter, not harder. The pressures of modern motherhood are intense. You're a busy working mom juggling all the balls and living in fear of dropping the exact wrong one. Here you'll find the tools you've been searching for to confidently prioritize your life and optimize your ability to rock all the hats that you choose to wear. I'll show you how to break through your limiting beliefs so you'll have more time and more money than you know what to do with. Because even in the busiest seasons of life, you can grow to master your money, own your time, and be the mom with all the margin. This is Fulfilled as a Mom. Hayley Arceneaux is a physician assistant at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, a career she committed to at the age of 10 after surviving pediatric bone cancer and being treated at St. Jude. She served as an ambassador for the hospital when she joined the first all-civilian orbital space mission, Inspiration 4, in September of 2021. And then she spent 3 days in orbit. At the age of 29, she became the youngest American in space, the first pediatric cancer survivor in space, and the first astronaut with a prosthetic body part. She hails from Louisiana, but is now living in Memphis, Tennessee, with her Aussie Doodle Scarlet. She continues traveling and exploring the beautiful planet she gained a unique perspective on from space. I am so over the moon. You see what I did there? To share this conversation with you of me being able to chat with Hayley Arceneaux and learn all about her unique perspective, perseverance, and the way that this opportunity to go into outer space changed her life forever. Beautiful. All right. Well, Hayley, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So if you could just introduce yourself in your own words to our guests, just say hello.
Hey everyone, my name is Hayley Arceneaux. I am a PA living in Memphis, Tennessee, and working at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and kind of a part-time astronaut too.
You say it so casually, like, oh, by the way.
Yes.
So in preparation for this chat and being able to sit down together, I dove into your book, which if you're listening, you should absolutely stop what you're doing, head to wherever you order books and pick up Wild Ride. You will love it. And one of the most interesting things to me is that I'm diving into your book and I'm expecting the first thing for you to say is that you always wanted to be an astronaut, that you had dreamed of going to space, that this is this lifelong dream come true. And it turns out that that isn't the case at all. So tell us how everything went down and how it was not really that specific dream that you were fulfilling.
Yes, I like to say becoming an astronaut is a dream I didn't know was a dream. It's something I never saw in my future. And really, my journey began when I was 10 years old. And I had been a healthy kid, really active. I had just gotten my black belt in Taekwondo. And I started having pain in my leg. And I started limping. Initially, they thought it was from overuse from the Taekwondo. But then I developed a lump above my knee. And my pediatrician obtained an x-ray and just told us straight up it was bone cancer, osteosarcoma. And I ended up going to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, where I underwent chemotherapy for a year. And then I also had surgery to save my leg, where they removed the bone affected by the tumor and replaced it with an internal prosthesis. And that year really made me who I am, and it just gave me so much love and so much zest for life. And I knew since I was 10 that I wanted to work at St. Jude. That was my dream. And when I entered college, I kind of wondered what I wanted to do in the medical field, and ultimately decided I wanted to be a PA. So all through college, I was taking the pre-PA classes and ended up going to PA school. And then a few years later, I got my dream job at St. Jude. I work as a PA inpatient with kids with leukemia and lymphoma. And so I really remember thinking about 2 weeks before I got the call, I'm sitting in my house thinking, I've peaked. Life is great. And then one day I hear from St. Jude, the chief of staff, who had never reached out to me. And he said that they wanted to talk to me about a unique opportunity. And I joined this call, not knowing what's coming my way, but I could not have guessed that they would ask me to go to space. And there was this space mission called Inspiration 4. It was the first all-civilian mission to orbit the Earth, and it was part of the purpose was to raise money for St. Jude. And so St. Jude wanted to send me to space to be an ambassador for the hospital. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only person that's ever gotten a phone call out of the blue saying, do you want to go to space?
I think that's pretty, yeah.
Yeah, it was very shocking, but I said yes immediately. I just, from the moment they offered it, I was so excited to go and to represent this hospital that I love so much. And so last year I trained, became an astronaut, went to space. We orbited Earth for 3 days. And now I'm back at my PA job at St. Jude. It's just been, it has been, if you'll allow me, a wild ride. But it's just been incredible.
Remember that one time that I burned out, like all the way out? Like toast that you popped into the toaster, not realizing the knob was set to darkest and walked away from level of burned out. I was burnt to a crisp. In that season, I was forced to choose between my health, my marriage, and my ability to be a good mom, and my job. So I quit that job. I chose me. And the reason that I was able to quit was because we had become debt-free and created financial margin in our lives before that season of burnout came along. I want the same to be true for you in the future, which means starting on your journey to financial independence now. I put together the 5 keys that you need to know in order to create a life of financial independence, and I'm giving them away for free. Download your guide at tracybingaman.com/money or click the link in the show notes. Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the most incredible yeses. And if you read the book, you'll hear about all these adventures that Hayley has taken on Earth and all of the things that you did. You were a lover of travel before someone presented you with this very unique vacation opportunity. So what do you have to say to the listener who is maybe hesitant and less eager to come forward with those yeses right away when opportunities present themselves?
And that's one thing I really took away from my space journey was how important it is to say yes when there are opportunities that could change your life. And it can be scary. I remember getting off the call with St. Jude after they invited me to go to space, and I looked at my hands and I was shaking. But I said yes anyway, and that yes has made all the difference in my life. It's changed my life. And so I don't know for what all the listeners, what their opportunity will be. Maybe it'll be a space opportunity, maybe just other incredible, but sometimes scary opportunities. But to just have that bravery to say yes, because it's going to change your life. And I think for me, I didn't necessarily change. I just became more me. But I've learned so much about myself in the process. And so I'm a big proponent of the word yes.
That's so awesome. And just like your grandmother said, you'll never know if you don't try. And so if you're holding back your yes because you think you might fail, or maybe you won't be good at it, or maybe it won't work out just the way you want it to, you can still say yes and try and see what happens, because you truly never know how it's going to end up.
I love that. It's so true.
So it is really crazy to think about the fact that you're now 30, back on Earth, and you're able to, 2 decades the other side of this experience of being diagnosed with cancer and going through what is arguably one of the hardest things that a kid would ever have to face. And you can say that cancer is this gift that you were given. And in the book, you share that if you could go back and you could tell your 10-year-old newly diagnosed self anything, that you wouldn't kind of spoil the end of the story. You wouldn't tell her how it goes, how the future turns out, how the cancer, ends, that you beat it, and that you eventually get to go to outer space. So I don't think that's true for a lot of people if they could go back in time. So tell us more about that and why that's how you feel.
I think as I've gone through life and I've had some hardships, that there were definitely times where I felt like I was losing my hope. And, but I think through all of that, what I've learned is the beauty of life is you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's around the corner. And that's why on your most difficult days, you have to hold on to hope that there will be better days, and better than you can even imagine. And so I think learning that through the years is what has been so much of the gift.
So that there's hope in the unknown and then not knowing how the story is going to end.
Absolutely. It's something I still hold on to.
It's a beautiful way to think about life, because I think that the unknown can be very scary and it can make people feel very anxious about not knowing how it turns out. But it's such a beautiful paradigm to see the future through. Like, it can get better. It will get better. It will be better than if you had planned it yourself. There are things that are coming that you can't even dream up, and they're in your future. It's incredible.
I really believe that. Yeah. Better than you can even dream up. And I've seen that. I've seen that over and over.
Yeah. So I wanted to take a minute to dive into the overview effect. So can you first tell us what that is?
The overview effect is when astronauts describe seeing the Earth and how it changes them and their perspective forever.
And how did that kind of change as you were able to experience seeing the Earth from a very unique point of view?
Yes. So the first day we were in orbit, I saw the Earth from the windows of our spacecraft, which are about the size of airplane windows, and it was beautiful. But it was the second day in orbit when I really experienced the overview effect, and it was the first time that we had been able to access our cupola, which was this giant dome window that was on our spacecraft, and it was actually the largest window that's ever been flown in space. And I wasn't expecting, but from that window and how high we were in altitude, we could see the entire 360-degree view of the Earth all at once. And we could see the blackness of space around it with stars. And I just remember the first time seeing that, I was just in such shock. It was very shocking to me, seeing the Earth in that completeness. And I was just so overwhelmed by the beauty of the Earth that I actually had a few moments where I just was floating there, like paralyzed, like just so overcome by just awe and wonder of what I was seeing. And then in the days we were in orbit, just more and more time I spent looking at the Earth, and it really filled me with this kind of overwhelming feeling of gratitude that I was getting to experience that, and especially when so few have gotten to experience it. When I went to space, less than 70 women in all of human existence had ever been to space. And I really felt the weight of that. And, also you look at the Earth and you just see it in such a way of oneness and not in division. And so that's something that really struck me too, is I felt very united with my fellow Earthlings in that respect. Mm-hmm. And it was life-changing.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible shift of perspective that, like, once you have it, you will forever see things, before or after that moment where you really changed your perspective. Do you have any advice for those of us who plan to keep our feet firmly planted on the Earth, how we can go about kind of bringing about those perspective changes, or even thinking about things differently and kind of broadening our views in that way?
Well, first off, Earth is a great place, and I don't blame anyone who wants to be there. I love Earth very much. But there's so much beauty in life, but you have to look for it sometimes. And especially those going through tough times, like when I was going through cancer treatment, you have this sometimes there's this light at the end of the tunnel that you're just chasing and not fully being present in the now. And that was one thing that I really had to learn when I was going through cancer treatment, was how to enjoy the now, how to make every day special, so that you're not just rushing to the next milestone, but you're actually really enjoying your life. And there's so much beauty all around us every day, but sometimes it really takes a conscious searching for it, but it's there.
Yeah, I think as a mom, that has been something that has challenged me, because with kids, these milestones are so obvious. Oh, I can't wait until my youngest kid is out of diapers or goes to kindergarten. And it can be very easy to fall into thinking about the destination as opposed to embracing the journey and the special moments of every day that you get to live through. And life moves so quickly that if we aren't intentional about pausing and looking around and seeking out blessings and beauty and all of these things, which quite honestly, they're all around you, whether you're noticing them or not,
Mm-hmm.
but pausing and being intentional and being observant and just looking around, sometimes with fresh eyes and sometimes just at the same thing that you've been looking at, that can make a really huge difference.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think it's in our nature to rush and to get to the next milestone. So it is just, that's the right word, intentional. It's an intentional thing to be aware of and seek.
Do you feel like you treat the world differently, or other people that you encounter, now that you've had this experience?
I do think it's really changed so much of my perspective. Definitely when I was up there, seeing the fragility of our atmosphere was another thing that stuck with me. And so I've become more environmentally conscious through all of this. And as far as like my interactions with others, I hope to exude the gratitude that I feel inside. And I've always felt a lot of gratitude just for my health and for being alive and for making it these 20 years post my diagnosis. But I hope to exude it in a whole new way now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a ton of PA moms who listen, because I am a PA, I am a mom, and like attracts like. So a lot of our listeners are PA moms. So I had messaged a couple of them and said, hey, what would you ask Hayley if you had this opportunity to sit down and have a coffee and talk to her? And the one thing that kept popping up was questions about flexibility and juggling so much. So they have followed your story and they have seen, okay, she's a PA, she's treating patients at St. Jude. And then now she's an astronaut. And now you're working to help train future people for future SpaceX missions. So how do you find the time to do all of those things? And do you feel like your life is peaceful and balanced and integrated, or does it feel like a lot or too much?
Right now, it feels like the right amount. And yes, it was, last year was especially difficult to juggle. When I was training, working, doing media as part of our fundraising effort with Inspiration for working out, it became a lot. And to the point where basically I was told by St. Jude to just take somewhat of a leave of absence to just concentrate on being an astronaut, which was very difficult for me. And so now that I've gone to space and I've come back to work, I have this whole new appreciation for my day-to-day job. But I have been very busy in the last year, as you mentioned, those things, and also writing this book, and then doing my favorite hobby, which is international travel. But for me, it all comes down to just prioritizing what's most important and being aware of protecting my energy, which is something that I think I hadn't really thought much about before all of this. But I've just really tried to focus on what is most important for me. And as much as I do say yes to opportunities, sometimes there is like self-preservation in saying no. And that is another thing that I've had to learn as well. And I think women, especially, we take on so much. And I think we're great multitaskers and great at balancing, but also sometimes just really having to actively prioritize the things that are most important to you and the things that bring you the most fulfillment.
I love that. And it's such a beautiful imagery that you are actively pursuing the things that matter most to you, not just saying, these are the things I value. I wish I had more of them in my life, but that in your decisions, in the day-to-day ways that you choose to spend your time and to use your energy, that you're moving towards those things that matter, prioritizing the relationships and the people and the causes that are most important to you. And that sometimes that comes with a no to other things that don't matter as much. And in order to do that, you have to know what matters most to you. So did you sort of always know what you valued and have clarity in that part of your life, or has that been a journey for you?
I think I've always known the basics of, like, I always wanted to work at St. Jude. I always wanted to help support kids with cancer. And then I have a very close family and I have really wonderful friends. But it was really something I've learned a lot about over this last year and a half since it was announced that I was going to space was really, that's when I started making active efforts of just doing what will both fulfill me and to help maintain my energy, but also helping others. But you learn a lot about yourself whenever you are out of your comfort zone, and so I have learned a lot about myself in the last year.
I can imagine that is, a massive radical change that you have walked through. And I think that sometimes those situations where suddenly we're asked to do more or our life has taken a different direction than we were expecting, we've sort of been flying on autopilot. We've defaulted to the normal routine and the normal things that we're doing. And sometimes a big shift or change like that makes us kind of reevaluate how we're filtering through things. Is this strategy that I'm using effective, or do I need to be more protective of my time and energy because suddenly there are more demands and there's only one of me? And unless I'm taking care of me, I can't serve this fundraising effort or show up well at work or do these other things for other people. And oftentimes we see that self-preservation, self-care as selfish, but it's really a necessity because you are not a renewable resource, right? There's one of you, and you need to kind of be wise about your time and energy. And it sounds like you've figured that out along the way as the demands on your life have increased.
And it's something I'm still figuring out. I think especially women are the ones that can feel that guilt. But it's something that just, like you said, there's only one of you, and it's something to work towards.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about flexibility. So as you mentioned, you have adapted to a series of insane situations and risen to the challenge despite your medical history, despite having the prosthetic, and past your own doubts and things that you were kind of not sure if you could conquer. So how do you think you were able to do that so well again and again as a part of this mission and the training for it?
I had the greatest motivation through all of this, and it was helping these kids that I love so much. I love my patients, and I knew that going on this mission would not only affect my patients, but kids with cancer around the world, and really people around the world who are going through tough times, because not everyone has had childhood cancer, but everyone has had something. And something to overcome. And I just wanted to be a beacon of hope by them seeing what I went through. And so for me, I just had such great motivation that I think it really helped give me energy whenever it was a very busy time training for space. And then just I learned a lot about adapting as well. I think that kind of goes back to whenever I had cancer, and really learning to expect the unexpected and go with it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that lesson I kind of learned early on, but it would just learn more and more about that, and being flexible and going with the flow, and just trusting that not only was everything going to work out, but trusting the people around me that were supporting me.
Yeah, I think that is really, really crucial. So the third thing that my very curious listeners wanted to know about was your dating life. So anyone who has read the book absolutely cheered out loud when you ditched your boyfriend after he wasn't supportive. And worse, he was really very mean during a really difficult time in your life. So talk to the person who is struggling to stay strong, to enforce boundaries, even if they're walking through something tough. So has that experience changed how you view relationships and boundaries? How is everything going in that part of your life?
It definitely changed how I view relationships and boundaries. And just a little background. So this was when my dad was actively dying of cancer, and I just kind of saw like how this person I was in a relationship was not present. And my brother's girlfriend, who now is my sister-in-law, how she was just so doting and just there for us. And I learned a lot about how sometimes the people you expect to be there for you can be the people that disappoint you the most. And if they're not going to be there, if they're not going to be present during the toughest times, they're not going to be there. And it was hard to make that choice. Ultimately, after I'd given a lot of chances, but I learned that I needed a partner and someone who would support me. And so, to all the single ladies on this podcast, that it's so worth finding the right person, even if there's a wait, because the person you're looking for needs to be your partner.
Yeah, life is full of challenges, as we've talked about. And if you're going to choose to go through this life in partnership, you really want someone who cares as much about you as you care about them, and who's willing to support you when things are going well and when things are not going well, because it doesn't always go well. It is hard and it is rocky, and there are twists and turns, and you never quite know what's coming next. But knowing that you have a partner who has your back is, if you're going to have a partner, that's the kind that you want for sure.
Yes. And so, and just having that like self-respect, where ultimately you know what you deserve. And even though it can be really difficult, just knowing, kind of like it goes back to, you don't know what's around the corner in a good way, and that you'll find someone who's going to be even better than you can imagine.
Yeah. It's a beautiful perspective. And I think that one that is refreshing to hear in that situation. So in the book, you talk about how your level of exercise before you started training for going to outer space was not great. And as a part of this, it was like, oh, I got to get a trainer. I'm going to start exercising. Tell us a little bit about that. And have you kept up with that level of physical activity now that you are done your mission?
So yes, I was never a big exercise person. And part of it was, which I can't put all the blame on this, but I didn't grow up in PE classes. I didn't grow up with a regular exercise routine because of the prosthesis in my leg. And so it was just something I never prioritized. And then, but I do love an occasional yoga class. But whenever my SpaceX physician asked how much exercise I was getting, I think the first answer I told him was maybe a little exaggerated. And then as I got to know more, I was like, okay, maybe I don't do yoga quite that much. And you know how all of our patients are.
Everyone at the doctor getting their primary care, like physical, like, yes, 30 minutes a day, 6 times a week.
about that. And so when kind of he asked more about it, and I was like, well, maybe not at that much. That's when he hooked me up with a trainer, and I was feeling motivated, because really astronauts, the main reason they want them to be physically fit before this space travel is they say increased muscle tone helps with the tolerance of G-forces with launch and reentry, but also they feel it helps with performance in microgravity. And so I was connected with a trainer, and also because we had to climb a mountain in our training. We climbed Mount Rainier, and so when I first started getting these workouts from her, I felt miserable. I was motivated, but not enjoying it. And then as it went on, I saw like how much progress I was making, and it made me really proud of myself. And that was a big motivation in itself, even after the mountain climb. Since space, I have realized I don't absolutely love the gym. And so I've found what works for me. So I love taking Pure Barre. And so I'll take Pure Barre classes or like a hot yoga or take my dog on long walks, but just trying to find some fitness. And yes, so last year, I'm glad that it gave me that awareness of the importance of physical health and made me start prioritizing it.
Absolutely. So you are, correct me if any of these are wrong, the youngest American to go to space. We already talked about only 70 other women before you guys went up, and the first person in space with a prosthetic body part. In the book, you're very vulnerable, talking about how you felt this weight of saying, hey, in the past, going to outer space has been reserved for, number one, professional astronauts, and number two, people who were at their peak physically, who had no imperfections, nothing to say, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. So no one really knew how your prosthetic was going to react to either training or launch or reentry or any of these things that you were asking it to do along with you. So how did that feel? And talk to the people who are in a body that they feel like is not perfect and therefore is somehow less than. Are you a Fulfilled as a Mom subscriber? If so, I've got a little gift for you. If you just signed up, you did one of the easiest but most important things that you can to support this show. And I want to say thank you for being here. This podcast is like a sixth child to me, so having you tune in each week is truly the best gift you can give me. You help the show big time by clicking that subscribe button, and I am so excited to help you in return. I put together this quick and dirty guide for you because if you're anything like me, your calendar is chock full. I'm sharing my top 4 ways to reclaim your calendar and your life as a busy working mom. It's got 4 action items that you can take today to start being back in the driver's seat of your schedule and wisely using that most limited, coveted resource of your time. To get your guide to reclaim your calendar, simply click subscribe if you haven't already. Send a screenshot of your subscribe page to info@tracybingaman.com, and we will send you this free goodie created with you in mind. If subscribing to Fulfilled as a Mom is the cake that you want to have and eat it too, then leaving a 5-star written review is the fluffy, sweet buttercream icing on top. Those reviews are life-giving to a show like mine. And if you've already written one, give yourself a big old pat on the back. If not, take 2 minutes, pop on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to the show and leave a rave review. Share your feedback and what you've learned and why you love the show so that other listeners just like you can find me and learn too.
You were right in that we did not know how this was going to go. And even my orthopedic surgeon, right before my first training exercise, which was centrifuge training, and my internal prosthesis was going to be exposed to 6Gs. When I asked him how it was going to go, he was like, and I kind of talk about it in the book, he had a visual. He had a model of my prosthesis on his shelf that he took off, and he was like, well, it could go like this. And then he held the pieces widely apart as if it were to break open. And I was like, well, I'll die if that happens. And so there was that level of fear of the unknown, but kind of like I talked about with like, I felt a weight on me, but in a beautiful way of I'm getting to do this. I get to be the first so that other people can come after me. I have to do this so that other people can come after me. And so that's just kind of what I kept going back to was even though I was scared, we've got to figure this out. And why not me? And so that was an empowering feeling for me. And, going through training that I talk about in Wild Ride was the mountain climb, for instance. I was so worried about my leg on that mountain climb, and my leg did great. But later in training, we're just sitting in our seats in the simulator, and I experienced just such horrible pain that I cry. And so it was difficult in that last year that in some ways I didn't know what would be best for my leg, and I kind of learned along the way. But my leg did great in space, and I was very happy that I had those 3 days of no pain, and now we know. But for those who feel like they're in this non-physically perfect body, I understand, and it can be incredibly frustrating at times. But one thing I learned was I was putting a lot of limits on myself without even realizing. And for example, with this climb up Mount Rainier, I did not know we would be climbing for 9.5 hours up the mountain on the first day. And if I had known it would be 9.5 hours, I would not have attempted it. But I realized after I had crushed it that that was me putting a limit on myself. And it made me think, what other limits do I put on myself? And, of course, like you gotta be smart in certain ways. I said no to skydiving last week, which was very difficult for me because I would love to jump out of an airplane, but I just didn't want to risk my leg. So, there's decisions that you make every day, and you do what you feel is best, but also kind of learning to make sure you're not actually limiting yourself.
Yeah, I think that there are so many limiting beliefs swimming around in each one of our minds that we have accepted as the truth. Whether it was your mom said it or your teacher said it or someone else said it about themselves and you thought, well, if they can't or they think they can't, I must also not be able to do that thing. So those thoughts may not be true. And this may be your cue to reevaluate some of your own limiting beliefs of what have you been telling yourself that you can't do? And what would happen if you just tried it, just to check and see if that belief is true or not?
I love that challenge to all the listeners to just reevaluate.
Yeah. So something that I find really interesting is in the book, you talk about after you kind of stepped away from your normal life, your normal friends, your normal home to go to St. Jude to do your treatment, to be away. Once you came back, you were really struggling with this identity of everything had become about you being the girl who had cancer. You could see that you had had treatment, your friends had maybe moved on, and you were kind of struggling to reintegrate back into life once you had come out the other side. So what advice do you have for someone who is listening who feels like there's part of their life that has sort of taken over their entire identity? And I think motherhood is a great example of that, where you become a mother and it's just this loud thing where you're a mom, and you're like, wait, I'm a person too, right? So I'm still the person that I was. Maybe I've changed. Maybe this experience has changed me, but that experience is not the single thing that defines me. So how did you navigate that?
I had to keep hoping that it would get better. And I think I tried to, like you said, like some of my friends had pretty much ditched me in that year that I was gone. And that was part of that was our age. We were 11 years old. But I think you're right in that people that go through really life-changing situations, that they can feel this sense of difficulty reintegrating. But just finding the people that still treat you like you, because you are still you. And even if you go through something life-changing, it doesn't mean you've changed. It means that you've just become more you. And finding and concentrating on those relationships where they normalize everything and they just don't treat you differently. And for me, those relationships were harder to find after I got back from treatment, but they were there, and concentrating on them is what helped me through that time to when I started feeling back to normal.
Absolutely. So one last question for you. If that phone call comes again and someone says, hey, Hayley, we have a seat for you on an upcoming flight to outer space, would you again say yes?
That is such a difficult question. It's something I think about pretty often too, but part of me would go back to space in a heartbeat. It's incredible. I loved training. I loved being in space. But I really want other people to go. And a big part of that is realizing how fortunate I am to have been one of the very, very few to have gotten that perspective of Earth from space, and I want other people to go. So I'd have to hear the circumstances. But
I think that says a lot about your heart, that you would want to, and would also want to not take up all of those seats for yourself, and to be able to share that experience and have others be able to experience it as well.
It's so life-changing. I can't hog space.
Awesome. So Hayley, tell us where people can follow and connect with you online, and where they can find the book.
Yes. So the book is it's called Wild Ride, subtitle A Memoir of IV Drips and Rocket Ships. And it is sold wherever books are sold. And also I narrated the audiobook. So if you want to hear me read you my life story, and can follow me on Instagram, Twitter. And yes, I continue sharing my journey on social media. And that started really whenever I was going through astronaut training, and then after I got back from space, and I had such a unique perspective to share, and I wanted to share these beautiful views of the Earth and these videos from space, and I continue to share those. And yeah, so I would love to stay connected with everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your energy with us, and for giving us a little peek into your new perspective that you're walking through life with. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for the kind words about my book. That means so much to me.
Of course. I'm doing a victory dance right now because you did it. You took the time to tune in, to reach for a better life, and to take care of you. Did our time together go by way too fast for anyone else? Head to fulfilledasamom.com for show notes and all the discount codes from today's show. You now have the tools and knowledge to change your life. Go blaze your trail, take that step, make the shift, and do the work to create fulfillment in your life today.